This tutorial shows you how to integrate two serverless cloud services, Amazon API Gateway and Amazon Dynamo DB, to creating a cloud-native to-do REST API. In this video, you are going to learn importing API descriptions into API Gateway, creating Dynamo DB tables, creating IAM policies and roles, integrating three AWS services, API Gateway, Dynamo DB and IAM. First step. Create resources. To get started, you need to create three sets of resources: API Gateway resources and methods, Dynamo DB table, and IAM role and policy. First off, build an API on Amazon API Gateway. API Gateway plays the role of an entry door for user API requests. In this video, we import an API description used in a previous video. Please follow the link to our GitHub repository on this video description if you want to use the same API we use here. This API consists of a main resource, to-dos, and a nested resource, ID. The to-dos resource has two methods, whereas the get method retrieves existing to-dos. The post method insert a new to-do. The nested resource, ID, has three methods. Each method enables a CRUD operation with a particular to-do, identified by its ID. One can delete an existing to-do, retrieve the to-do content, and update the content of an existing to-do. Next, create an Amazon Dynamo DB table. Dynamo DB is a fast and scalable NoSQL database. A Dynamo DB table is where your data is saved. To create a Dynamo DB table, open the Dynamo DB console. The only two information you need to create a table is its name and a partition key, which identifies each table item as a unique entry. Wait until the table is created. Finally, you need to give API Gateway permission to access your Dynamo DB table. To do so, access the IAM console and create a policy. IAM is the AWS service for managing users and permissions. A policy is a document that describes the access rules for an AWS resource. You need a policy that enables CRUD operations, such as create, read, update and delete items on your Dynamo DB table. AWS documentation has a policy that fits perfectly for this purpose. Please check out the link for the documentation in this video description. Copy the policy and paste it in the policy creation box. Replace region, account, and table occurrences with appropriate values for your region, account, and Dynamo DB table. Name and create your policy. Next, attach your recently created policy to a role. A role is a temporary permission. Attaching a policy to a role enables a service to assume that role, and perform the operations allowed in the policy. Create a role. Then, attach the policy. Second step. Create integration mapping templates. There are several serverless patterns for integrating Amazon API Gateway and Amazon Dynamo DB. This tutorial uses mapping templates. Mapping templates enable transforming API Gateway payloads into Dynamo DB data types. These data types are used with actions, such as putItem, to create a Dynamo DB table item. You need to map each method in your API. For each method, update the integration request to access an AWS service. First off, choose the post method. Go to integration request and change the integration type to AWS service, as we are now integrating API Gateway and Dynamo DB. Choose the region where your Dynamo DB table was created. The Dynamo DB service. And the post method. API Gateway calls Dynamo DB using Dynamo DB API actions. The Dynamo DB API reference lists all possible actions. In this video, we're gonna use delete item, get item, put item, and scan. Each action item describes its purpose, syntax and payload. It's important to observe required attributes for each action payload. Use the putItem action as the chosen action. Paste the previously created role ARN as the execution role, and save it. Next, create a mapping template for JSON payloads. This template represents the payload API Gateway sends to Dynamo DB, mapping a post method in API Gateway with a putItem action in Dynamo DB. Notice we identify the table name and item attributes. Each attribute uses variables that directly map to the API Gateway payload. Please follow the link in this video description for checking out how to use these variables. Save the mapping template, and test the post method. Just add a request body that conforms to the API specification. The 200 status code means that the request succeeded. Examine the logs to check out the payload before the mapping template transformation, and after it. This is the payload sent to Dynamo DB, using the putItem action. You can explore Dynamo DB items to see the result of testing the API. Back to the API Gateway console, repeat the same process for all API methods, changing the action name and mapping templates as shown in the video. Notice that you need to change both request and response integration for methods that return values to the API user, such as the get method. For the scan action, DynamoDB returns a list of items. API Gateway uses Apache Velocity language to transform a list of values into another list. This is necessary because DynamoDB doesn't return values in the same format your API users are expecting. Basically, this template iterates over DynamoDB items, mapping each item attribute to API payload attributes. Save, and test it. Last step. Clean up. If you want to clean up the resources used in this video, Start with the Dynamo DB table. Then delete your API. Finally, delete your policy and role.